Hi, and welcome to the National New Teacher Support Podcast, sponsored by New Teacher University. I'm your host, Dr. Terry Ross, and today I have a couple of young ladies with me from the League of Advocates, and I have with me Dr. Christine Pugh and Dr. Allison Oliver. So you mentioned trust, and then you mentioned consistent. What's a routine that teachers can put in place that would help build trust that students can say every day? Because teachers have to understand that when you have something in place that students know is going to be there, that's one way to build trust. So what's one routine that teachers can do that will help students say, hey, I can trust them?
Ask me how I'm doing. We always go straight into the academics, speak to me, see me. A lot of students sit in that classroom, and especially the ones that fall under the radar that you don't have behavior problems, they may be borderline failures, they kind of fall in the cracks. See me, see each student. I've seen it done where they have special handshakes. I know that's not indicative of every educator's personality, but something that I would do that was easy, just like what you guys do this weekend, or have anybody seen this? Have y'all, just simple things, listening to them when you're taking roll, listen to the conversations and piggyback off of them. Have you guys seen that new Maserati? I like it. What do y'all want to drive when you grow up? Simple things to get them to buy in. You have to reach them before you can teach them. So, starting with asking, how do you feel? What's going on in your life right now? It doesn't always have to start with work, because sometimes academic task breeds anxiety for all students, even some of your higher performing students. I think having a connection is a consistent practice that educators need to focus on, and not so much all the time the textbook, coming right into the classroom. Let's get to it. It takes 2 minutes to ask someone how they're doing.
Thank you so much for that, and the connection and the reach and teach, because that's what it is. Children have to know that you're there for them, and they can pick up on it easily if you're just there to do the job and leave. And it takes about 2 minutes. And I know we're pressured with so many tests and things coming our way, assessments and district mandates, but it is important that teachers take a moment to stop and get to know your students just briefly, and that'll go a long way. So it's going slow to go fast.
Exactly.
So Dr. Pugh, talk to us about some strategies that teachers can use to help set climate in the classroom, because we know culture is our routines and procedures and how we do things, but climate is how we feel. And we know that most of our children, and especially children that are coming from homes that may not be affluent, we focus a lot on feelings, because oftentimes those are the pieces that you have, the emotional piece. So what are some things that teachers can do to set the climate in their classroom?
So to me, it's more routine. And teachers always say, well, send them to the council where they can't self-regulate. They're learning to regulate, and we have to have expectations that aren't so high, and recognize that students are at different levels of self-regulation. And so one strategy that you can use is called Fishbowl. And so Fishbowl, you may start your week off, and you have every student for that week enter in how they are checking in for that week. What are their expectations to happen in that classroom for that week? And you put it in a fishbowl. And a lot of times what happens in the climate, because it's on field, we mess up in our younger ages by choosing students, because one student may often feel overlooked because they're too embarrassed to hold their hand higher. But if you use the fishbowl technique, it's chance. So you may pull 3 per day, and that you have no idea whose name is being pulled, but you get to pull and discuss, that student gets to discuss their feelings for that day. But if you do it in a round robin type of way, by the end of the week, every student has been able to assess and discuss. But what you do with Fishbowl, the difference is that, say for instance, it's Tuesday, but I didn't go on Monday, and my plans have changed. This is where the grace piece comes in. They are allowed to add to the Fishbowl. They are allowed to add to it daily, because what we feel Monday, we may not feel Friday. And so if they need to change their fishbowl content, they can change that fishbowl content. And so before class starts, and as you start and you pull those feelings, and then the class can have a discussion. Because one thing we don't do is we don't make it acceptable to have feelings.
Yes.
The assumption is that you come to school, you are happy, you are ready, and you're about to work. The idea is that some days all we can do is be present.
Yes. We're doing the best we can to be there. Now, what do they put on this paper? You said they put feelings. So give me some examples of.
Put their feelings. So sometimes, like I told my students it's called grace. I use a different terminology, but that's a different discussion. But and students can basically, when they're checking in, they are saying this week, my weekend was wonderful, and I am starting this week off feeling great. I am feeling awesome. I am feeling ready. But some students may come in, this weekend has taken me down, and today is just not a good day. Whatever it is in their words, what you're going to do with this is you're going to expand their vocabulary, because what I always say as a counselor, I'm sick of mad, happy, sad, glad. So what you do is when you see this, you're also working on those vocabulary expansions of what other word can you use? Because sometimes students feel indifferent. Sometimes they're feeling confused. And so you can pause your lessons if you choose to and utilize Fishbowl in the middle. What are you feeling about what I'm teaching? What do you feel about the classroom culture? What are you feeling about the classroom climate? And you can target your Fishbowl toward things in your class for you to get better. Because as Dr. Oliver talked about, the thing that teachers sometimes lack and fail in is assessing themselves. If a student says, I don't like your class, they're offended. This is not a time to take offense. This is time to say, what is it that I can do for students who are like you in the future? Because I may not be able to service you, but I'll have another student who finds themselves bored. I'll have another student who finds themselves not challenged. Whereas other students are enjoying the class, but you got to figure out the reasons why, so you can continue to improve the climate. We don't improve year to year. We keep doing the same thing and hope it gets by and hope it does better. The worst thing you can do is get an assessment from a student and say, well, that's not true. I don't do that. Well, you're not the person assessing. So Dr. Oliver letting her students assess her, that built a climate as well as a culture in that classroom where they had a feeling of safety. They had a feeling of trust. They could come and report to her. They could say things that they wouldn't say to anybody else. So between Fishbowl, and I also say don't have virgin ears. Whatever they bring to you, because kids will test you. Whatever they bring to you, don't have the shock factor. Be willing to speak about it in that moment and then refer them to the right resources, even if it's the thing that wants to lay you out on the floor. So you have to do those two things to me to build that climate, which impacts that culture.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Pugh. It's in a time of high stakes testing. We're coming out of a pandemic. Everyone is feeling a little overwhelmed. And we know how new teachers are feeling. Thank you for sharing with them to stop. And let's deal with feelings for a little while. Let's deal with the climate of our classroom, because that's a strategy that some people would think you have to do it in an advisory time or a homeroom time. But to add something like that to the classroom, again, that's stopping to take the temperature and look at the humanness of our children. So thank you for that.